Can't hear me? Okay, good evening, honorable city council members. To our chief of staff, our city attorney, to our economic development director, our deputy clerk, and the chairs. Welcome to the City of Romulus City Council Special Meeting Study Session. This meeting is to discuss amendments to Chapter 6 Animal Ordinance of the Romulus Code of Ordinances. We, at this time, will have roll call. Councilwoman Abdo. Here. Councilman Barton.
Here.
Councilman Kraut.
Here.
Councilman Jones.
Here.
Councilwoman Talley.
Here.
And Councilman Wadsworth.
Here.
And we know that Councilwoman Roscoe is excused.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum. Tonight's special meeting agenda is as follows. Number 1, roll call. 2, agenda. 3, the discussion is amendments to Chapter 6 Animal Ordinance. 4 is public comment, and 5 is adjournment. And a motion will be in order to accept the special meeting agenda as presented.
So moved to accept the special meeting agenda as presented.
Support.
It's been a motion by Ms. Talley, supported by Ms. Abdo, to accept the study session agenda as presented. Ms. Talley?
Yes.
Ms. Abdo?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Yes.
Mr. Kraut?
Here.
Chair votes yes, the motion is approved.
Thank you. Number 3, we're in discussion, and to discuss the amendments to Chapter 6 Animal Ordinance, and I'm not sure who's going to lead off into the discussion. I know we have Captain Sawa, we have Attorney Greco here. And do you want to?
I think Dave Greco is going to do that.
Okay. Okay.
I'm going to point this one thing out to him.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I just want to know it wasn't me.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Once again, I'm Dave Greco. I handle prosecutions for the city. What is before you today is the Animals Ordinance, which is Chapter 6 of the Code of Ordinances. And the reason why we're here, frankly, is as you are aware, several weeks ago or a month or so ago, it was brought to my attention, or came to me, about the leash law issues, right, with regard to the leash, and whether or not we had a requirement, what's required by dog at large, and can we clarify whether or not an animal or dog particularly needs to be on the leash in the city of Romulus. So once I took a look at it to see exactly where we're at, what we need to do, look at different examples on what to do for leash law, I took a look at Chapter 6 animals in general. And once I took a look at it, there really was a lot of things, there are a lot of things that really need to be cleaned up. Some things that are old and antiquated with regard to language, and some of the things that need to be fixed with regard to the penalties, and the penalties with regard to some of the charges and things that are regulated by the Animals Ordinance, and also really to get them in line with neighboring communities and what's kind of expected for certain charges throughout, I'll say, Michigan and the downriver area. What happened here, that I've been here a couple of times with regard to some ordinances over the 2+ years that I've represented the city of Romulus, is that in our, before I get into the specifics, but in the Code of Ordinances for the city of Romulus, and just like any other ordinances for any municipality, you know, is a function of what we're allowed to do as a municipality from the Michigan Constitution, which basically says that we can have crimes and outlaw and govern conduct in our city of crimes up to misdemeanors, 90-day misdemeanors, right? That's what we can prosecute locally. And historically in Michigan, I think every ordinance was a misdemeanor crime. Until several years ago, a couple of decades ago, municipal civil infractions came into being, first with regard to traffic offenses, and then with respect to a lot of ordinance enforcement. And if you'll notice, well, you know, with regard to our zoning ordinance, that's all civil infractions now. It's something that was passed several years ago. So in the Code of Ordinances, at the top, in the beginning, Chapter 1, I believe, where it has the general provision, it has in there that it says, hey, any violation of this Code of Ordinances is a misdemeanor crime for a punishment of up to 90 days in jail and up to a $500 fine. And then the next section says, except for these chapters are municipal civil infractions. As far as I can tell, and I know the city uses Muni Code to codify its Code of Ordinances and then publish it, so you can go look at them on the website. And Muni Code does a very good job with a lot of municipalities, I believe, around the country and here, where they do a good job of, you know, I would say, I don't know how many times we've had it done, but they do a kind of a recodification or recommend it every several years. And what happened, as far as I can tell, and I can't remember off the top of my head, whether it was in like 2000, maybe 10 years ago or something, when they did a recodification and they moved some of the chapters around, the section of the Code of Ordinances says, except for these chapters shall be civil infractions, doesn't make any sense whatsoever anymore, because they moved things around and they didn't match up that section with the other section. So it'll say like chapter, it just names a bunch of chapters, but they don't go toward anything that makes any sense. So that's where I think there was a little bit of a mix-up with some of the things that probably used to be civil infractions that aren't now officially because of the way they're coded. So, that being said, with regard to the change to the leash law, which I believe was done at the previous city council meeting, you have before kind of a comprehensive look at Chapter 6, animals, for this chapter. And if we kind of, I think the best way would probably for me to kind of go through it page by page to highlight the changes that I'm suggesting that you consider to make these amendments. And hopefully, I think the copy that you have has tracked changes on it. So if you look at page 1, section 6.1 is the definitions section. And if we go to, I didn't really make many changes here except for on page 4, under the definition of shelter, I added corral, pen, or barn. These are not things that are kind of like high on the list of things that we're dealing with. I've been here for a couple of years now. I've never dealt with a corral, pen, or barn. But when you look at the ordinance as a whole, and as we go through it, you'll see it makes some references to enclosures and stuff. And if we add that to a shelter, it just makes it more consistent with, especially one of the sections that I don't deal with very often, which is the livestock horses section. So I just added that there. So that's not a controversial change. Then if you look at, and please, everyone, feel free to stop me if you have any questions or if I'm talking a little fast. So. On the next page, on page 5, under section 6.3, I took out the section of theft of animals. That's not because we're not against theft of animals, but in our criminal section, where we have all our offenses, like assault and battery, disturbing the peace, drunk driving, all that stuff, we already have an ordinance for larceny, for theft. It's unnecessary for it to be in here. We don't want it really part of the Chapter 6. If somebody steals somebody's dog, that's the same as stealing anybody's property. They're going to be prosecuted, and it's a police matter. It's not an animal control matter. So that's one thing that I think just needs to be taken out, and we're not losing anything by taking this out. It is in fact illegal in the city of Romulus to steal someone's dog, and it'll be prosecuted as such. All right, and it's a police matter, by the way, not a pound master or animal control matter at that point in time. So that's the reason for that change. All right, the next significant changes or section was on page 6, or is on page 6, under Division 2. I put in to clarify shelter license, because this Division 2 deals with licenses for shelters being provided in the city, as opposed to, when we get to it, dog licenses. And both of those chapters were just, heading was license. So I thought it would make sense to clarify, one is for a shelter license and one is for a dog license. Sure. Clerk.
If I can, and council, the reason why I have some comments, because we dealt a lot with the amendments back in 2015, I believe. You know,
Okay.
we were trying to define commercial license, private license, and so there was just a couple of things here, you know, when we're talking about the entitlement, are we just referring to, here it refers specifically to dogs. In section 6-62, so it says to keep any number of dogs not exceeding 5 that are 4 months or older. And then when we move down a little bit, you know, we're talking about domestic animals and things, we're talking about dogs and cats and rabbits and things. So I guess my question is, are we, the intent, are we focusing on just dogs? Keep any number of dogs not exceeding 5 that are 4 months or older in that case. In the case of a private stable or boarding stable, the license shall entitle the holder to keep the number of animals. And I get that part, but we're talking about licenses. And then we move down a little bit later under dog license. It talks about, you know, domestic animals. So I'm just kind of bringing that up just for a little bit of clarification there. We were having a conversation a little bit about it.
Yes, well, that's part of the reason for the clarification here. Because when some of the things, and I'm not sure, the answer is in looking through this, you're correct, clerk, that there was a lot of things that didn't make any sense. So for example, as I was looking through this, I actually called the animal shelter to ask if we require licenses for anything else other than dogs as animals. And they said no. I said, okay, because it wasn't clear when I read, you know, the ordinance, if we require licenses for cats or things like that. So with respect to the shelter license, that would be something, if we look at, like, there's a definition of shelter. Yes. So a shelter includes a private kennel, commercial kennel, private stable, boarding stable, pet shop, corral, pen, or barn.
Right.
Now, when we talk about shelter also, when we go into the livestock stuff, it also talks about shelters there, which is not required necessarily to be licensed for a corral or a pen, but maybe for a boarding stable, correct?
Okay, correct.
Yeah. So this specific section is talking about, well, entitlement for a private kennel, which that may be a different definition than shelter, by the way.
Correct.
Kennel.
Maybe I should just let you finish, you know, after you
Sure.
go through it, and then I'll come back. I
Okay.
highlighted a couple of notes
Yeah,
and
okay, fair
things,
enough.
so as you were going through it, I'm
Right,
sorry.
right.
Okay.
Okay, so once we, again, with Division 2 on page 6 under the shelter license, so, and this might be a question I have for the clerk as well. I took out section 6-63, serial number in nature, where it has all licenses are duly stamped and engraved thereon with a serial number and indicate the nature of a license.
That's
Is
true.
that something that we actually do?
Yes.
Okay, that could be something, yeah, I didn't know if it was because I know when we're dealing with business licenses, kennel licenses a lot, they're just a piece of paper and a certificate. But we actually, for these licenses, for these shelters, do use,
Yeah, it has a little license number on there, and you get a little metal.
but is that for the dog?
It's for the dog.
Oh, see, this is the shelter license.
I'm sorry.
And I
Okay.
get, all right, so I guess my question is for a private kennel or a license for a private kennel or a boarding where we want them to register or have this, whatever, we don't engrave on a piece of metal, isn't it a piece of paper, like a certificate or something?
We will give them for a private kennel, they will get their certificate for, because they have the 4 more dogs for the
Right.
private kennel. But as far as though, each dog has to be licensed, have to have their own license, so they will get that little metal,
Right. And-
license there, so.
Right, so isn't the shelter license would be something different than the dog tags?
I guess so, I'm not, and I see what you're saying, where you're going with this, where you said it doesn't quite make sense, but that's, maybe it's just in the wrong place.
Well, when we get to, I do deal with the dog tags and the engraving and so, but this is like a serial number in nature. This is talking about pet shop license, commercial kennel, boarding stable. We
So
don't
they,
do this.
yeah, no, they wouldn't get.
An engraved,
the
they would just get
No,
a
they would just get their business license certificate.
yeah, like a
correct.
certificate or something,
Yes,
right? Yeah,
that's
so
correct.
that's why, so for 6-63, that's why I took that out. It doesn't seem to make sense. We don't engrave on a piece of metal when you get your pet shop license, or your shelter license, or your boarding stable license. So it doesn't, I'm not sure the purpose of this one here. So that's the suggestion for the deletion there. Then I just made some cosmetic changes next. Okay, and then on page 7, 6-90, domestic animals limitations. So Mr. Hitchcock just pointed out to me from a zoning ordinance, a limitation on the number of dogs, which I believe was 4 or less, is a, if there's more than 4, it's 4 or more, it's a kennel, or it has to be registered.
For 4 or 5, you have to have a private kennel license. If you go to 6, then you have a commercial.
Commercial kennel. All right, so so the limitation here is that for private homes, for homes that you're not going to a kennel or commercial kennel, there be a limitation on the number of animals to be kept in the home. This is, by the way, something that we run into from time to time. People with lots of dogs or cats and get complaints from neighbors. So it is something that's there. Go
So
ahead.
Attorney Greco, so with this, and I know I had a conversation with Attorney Hitchcock and the deputy clerk, and we were talking about this section here, with the total number of your domestic animals, the limitation. And I was under always the impression that we were talking about dogs, because that was always what came up, the number of dogs. But if we read this here, it's like, if 4 is that magic number there, then I can only have 2 dogs and 2 cats. Like, I couldn't have 3, and we know that there are some people that might have 3 dogs and 2 cats. So with that, and so does that mean that if a resident has 3 dogs and 2 cats, so is that collective of those domestic animals, or are we just talking about dogs? Because I guess in the past, when looking at this ordinance, it was always, the focus was always about dogs. No one ever really addressed cats or other domestic animals. So that's, I think, just clarification.
So this specific section is in the aggregate, talking about any number of animals, the mix of them. It's not just limitations to dogs. But let me just suggest this to the city council. When I came up with the change for the leash law, which was a specific assignment to do that, and then I informed, the chief, Captain Salwa, I informed the mayor's office and Steve, that I think we needed to make some changes, and I would go through and make it. I sent this copy over. We have not roundtabled this. So these are just my suggestions. I'm not married to any of these ideas. It was just some things that I saw, and that's why they're sent here tracked for, like suggestions, ideas, things like that.
Can I say, it is consistent with the zoning ordinance, though, which says dogs, cats, or other domestic animals. Also, when it talks about the 4 and 5 being required to be a private kennel.
Right.
It uses the same language.
So I guess in answer to the clerk, it does seem to be consistent, but if you have 3 dogs and 2 cats, I guess you're in excess of this, and would need to be registered as a kennel or a
Yeah.
private kennel.
It's always, the narrative has always been about dogs, that every time the issue came up, and I know we spent a lot of time with trying to, with these definitions, especially as it came to private kennel license versus commercial. So I think just reading this, I think a lot of people may be under the impression, oh, I can have up to, it's usually dogs, you know.
Correct.
And that's.
Well, we deal with cats, by the way.
Right,
Had
right,
some
and I know
issues with
cats and
lots of
dogs.
cats. And when I put this in here, you know, all communities are different. I represent a community that does not have as much of open land as there is here, so there isn't, or there are not any issues or concerns regarding horses or livestock. So you should take that into consideration as well, your community, and what the community expects or wants or things. You know, whether it's the number of dogs or not the number of dogs, or you don't want to, you know, you want to just leave the limitation in zoning, or whether it's aggregate, that's all okay too.
Okay.
Yeah, so it would be up to you, and as the clerk is pointing out, you know, anecdotally, as you guys have looked at this, or know people or know neighbors, what may work and may not work as numbers is fine. Again, there are some suggestions, like I said, like the last section we just looked at, I'm like, we don't really do that. I can tell you my opinion is we should just cut it out. On stuff like this, I don't know what number works for the community, what's appropriate for this community may not be the same as a different community.
And I think too, just that the language should be as much as possible consistent with what our zoning ordinance
Right.
states as well. I mean, and this is small, it's no big deal, but, you know, non-breeding rabbits, but then, and what's
Yeah.
being presented here, but like our zoning ordinance just says 45 dogs, cats, and other domestic animals.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it's not a big deal, but I think some people might see that. I don't know what jumped out at me, and I'm like, rabbits? Because further down, there is a definition dealing with, I think they were small animals.
Right.
What defines rodents, and I shouldn't say rodents, but, you know, rabbits and gerbils and things and pets of that nature, so.
Correct. All right, so the next section that I had, I didn't change really substantively the section 6-91, the public nuisance. I didn't really make any substantive changes, I just cleaned up the language a little bit, which is to just leave it as a public nuisance for someone to keep, care, or maintain an animal in such a manner that creates a public nuisance. I took out some language, not that those things like turning over garbage pails and stuff would not be a nuisance. It in fact would be. It's not, we're not crossing it out because those things don't apply. It just seems like it was language from the 1950s or 60s that we can kind of take out and streamline and just say public nuisance that are there. And then really, the public nuisance and causing a nuisance doesn't just have to be turning over garbage pails, but anything that's creating a nuisance to the neighbors and their enjoyment or reasonable enjoyment of the property, which can include, again, turning over garbage pails and any number of things that are there, including unsanitary conditions, failing to pick up after their dogs, things like that. Section 6-92, we already amended. The one that's in here is not, that it says dog or cat in here, but we've already passed that one.
Okay, right.
Yeah, so this, you can ignore 6-92 because we already have to do 6-92. Next section, 6-93, and actually also to the council, to the chair.
Yes.
If I'm moving too slow or we need to move things along, we can move things along. I know
Oh,
you've all looked at it and read it, so.
Right, we have a meeting at 7, so.
Yeah, cool. So, all right, let me streamline this a little. You can see my changes, which after we got through here, a lot of it's cleaning up. If you get to page 11, Division 2 is, again, dog license. That's the only animal that we specifically require a license for. Page 13, there's something in here regarding the transfer of a dog license that didn't seem to make any sense to me whatsoever. I think if you have a dog and you get a dog license for it, and you get a new dog, you need a new dog license for it. I mean, we need the same information for the new dog anyway, the rabies certificate, all that stuff. So the transfer just, I suppose if you have a dog and you've got a license for it and it passes away and you pick up a new dog, maybe the unfairness at some point was, how much is a dog license? Yeah.
I think they're 10,
$10 or $15?
something like that.
Yeah, it's like $10 or $15. Maybe somebody thought it was unfair. I paid for a dog license this year. My dog only lived 4 months. Now I got a new dog after. It seemed to have the transfer more complicated than it needed to be. If you have a new dog, just come in, fill out the application, pay the fee, provide the certificate. And then the most important thing, just to sum up here, is if you go to the end, the last page, page 18, this is the most significant change that we're making, that's most important actually to me as the prosecutor for the city, is I added Article 6 violations and penalties. And basically what this says is that we're changing the chapter to be civil infractions rather than misdemeanors with respect to everything in there, like dog at large, dog on a leash, you don't have your license, you didn't get your dog shots, all those things, except for certain sections that involve animal cruelty, inhumane treatment of animals, things like that. And that would be consistent with all of the neighboring communities. Nobody's getting charged with a 90-day misdemeanor because they did not get a dog license or that their dog got out, ran out the front door. They're issued tickets. And because those things can turn into a public nuisance, we do have tools with them being civil infractions if we need to kind of clamp down on somebody's really creating a distraction or a problem in the neighborhood to take action that way rather than the misdemeanor issue, which just doesn't make sense. Animal cruelty, absolutely, should be a crime if somebody, if we, and we do, by the way, charge under those inhumane conditions. We have entered apartments or homes where dogs are kept in cages, feces everywhere. It's terrible. So those most serious things would still be treated as a crime. The other things that are part of enforcement and stuff would be civil infractions, more appropriately charged and easier for us to enforce.
John,
Yes, Mr. Wadsworth.
I have a question.
Yes.
Going back to 6.155, it talks about the animals being destroyed. And it says rabies, vicious, injured, sick, so forth and so on. I would like to see in this paragraph put in that no healthy animal is to be destroyed, but in black and
So
white.
in 6-155.
Yeah, it talks about, you know, if they're sick, they're injured, rabies, or they're vicious. I mean, we built this $1 million new shelter by making 4 times more space for more animals. So then we become a no kill shelter.
So
That'll be in
we
there.
want to make sure we're a no-kill
Yeah,
shelter?
that's,
Okay.
If I might add,
I'm not talking about sick, injured, vicious,
Oh, of course not.
rabies
No, I
animals.
understand. I understand what you're talking about. Yeah, right, because the issue becomes with the municipal
And
shelters.
when you become a no-kill shelter, you open yourself up for more rants, so forth and so on. Just the term, it's unhealthy, animals will be destroyed.
I think the only problem with that is.
I find no problem with that at all, Steve, not at all.
No, we take dogs from other communities where they're paying us per day to hold the dog, but there's a limited number of days that they're willing to pay. And if nobody adopts the animal,
That's, the animals do get adopted, they do.
We can look into some language. We can, look into some language there.
If word would get out that we put down a healthy animal from a different city, there'd be problems for us here. Believe me, there would.
well, generally, they don't want them back under any condition. They pick them up off their streets and they don't have a dog pond, so based on a contract relationship with us, they give us the dog, they pay, and we try to find a new home for it. But if nobody wants the dog, eventually,
We don't, at this point, we don't arbitrarily put down good animals yet.
Not that
I
I'm
think that's
aware
why
of.
that should be-
Not that I'm aware of. I don't.
I'm not aware of any either, and
Yeah,
I'm always over there
Not
looking.
that I'm aware of. I think that, well, Counselor, I think Mr. Hitchcock brings up a good point, because a lot of it is about resources, and we're not talking about, we're talking about, with regard to no-kill shelters, which I think no one is in favor of putting down healthy animals that
That's why I'm
can and
asking
should
you
be
to just-
adopted. I think that
I'm not
needs-
asking you to put in no-kill shelter. I'm just
No,
put the term that no healthy animals
yeah,
are destroyed.
the issue that I guess I would have concern with is that it potentially, well, we can have a policy with regard to that without it being written into the ordinance.
You know, I think it should be.
Got him in writing.
I mean, we can have a policy with respect to that. I just,
It's something that you don't even want to have to bring up.
of course not. No.
Let's
No,
put it that way.
and I can tell you with my experience with the individuals that work at the shelter, because I have regular experience with them, with dogs getting loose, dog bites, things like that, that everybody is always concerned about rehoming the dogs that need to be, can be, or should be rehomed. But we can look into language with
Okay.
regard to that to
Thank you.
present.
Through the chair, I have a question.
Yes, okay, let's, Ms. Abdul, and then we can
So we
speed it
are
up.
limiting them to just people to 3 animals? Is that what this is going to do?
That's what's in here. That's what's in here today, but if there needs to be, because like I said, we haven't necessarily round-tabled this. These were just things that I saw, consistency to clean up changes, consistent things that I've seen come up, and ideas that were brought out there. So based upon the comments tonight, we can, I certainly can take a look at some stuff, or we can take a look at some things and roundtable them on what's necessary.
I'm sorry, if I can, when you're revisiting this and looking at, and we can move on, but could you take a look at section 6-100? It was just, you were just correcting language, but that's something I guess I looked at, where it says any person who picks up a stray dog or cat that is at large within the city of Romulus must report that event and deliver the animal to the animal shelter within 48 hours. That's kind of, I thought about that, and I mean, I know you can report if you see a stray animal, but you don't know, the temperament of the animal, but then, let's say it's on the weekend, and maybe the animal shelter's closed, I know you have 48 hours, but what if you find this stray animal, I'm just thinking of scenarios, and the animal shelter's full, and you have this stray animal here that no collar or leash. Just something to look at, maybe what, I don't know what other communities do, but I just thought that, I never saw that before, and when I kind of took a look at it, so.
Sure.
As you're revisiting that, can
Sure.
you?
Yeah, I think this is for taking possession of an animal, because, and one of the reasons why you want to deliver to shelter might be
Well,
someone's
sure,
animal.
absolutely.
And calling in a stray, this does not require you to go pick up a stray that you see.
Right, okay.
You know,
It was just a little confusing there.
And we do have we do have a problem with people actually dropping off animals, claiming they're strays.
Through the chair.
Thank you.
Okay, now,
All right, what if we have someone who currently has more than 3 animals? Do they have to get rid of them? I mean, I think this needs to go out to the public more before we vote on something like this.
Sure, yeah.
You may have somebody that has 4 dogs, and all of a sudden they're told they can only have 3.
Yeah,
it's not on the agenda tonight for even a first
I
reading.
know, I'm just saying that we gotta do something,
Yeah.
get that information out and see how the public feels.
It
And
would-
again, councilperson,
I-
what may be
I would-
appropriate? Yeah.
I would just remind you that to change that is to change the zoning ordinance also, because the zoning ordinance now says if you have 4 or 5, you have to register as a private kennel, and you have to have 1.5 acres of property to be eligible for a private kennel. So, right now, it limits it, the zoning ordinance limits it to 3 also.
And And there are some other requirements with respect to inspections and concrete and housing and shelter and the kennels for the dogs at that point in time.
Any other comments from council? No other comments?
Okay. If there are no other comments from council, agenda calls for public comment. And this is the portion of the agenda for those who are in the audience that would like to have a comment concerning the amendments to the animal ordinance. And at this time, if you'd like to do so, indicate by raising your hand.
Any comments from the audience? Not close that part out.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Takes us to number 5, adjournment. Time is 7:08.
So moved.
Support.
A motion by Mr. Wadsworth, supported by Ms. Abdo for adjournment. Mr. Wadsworth?
Yes.
Ms. Abdo?
Yes.
Mr. Kraut?
Yes.
Ms. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, we are adjourned. We'll go into our public hearing meeting.
We are. Second, let me get my bearings there. Okay. This is the, moving on to our second special meeting. Today's date is February 10th, 2025, and this is the City of Romulus City Council Special Meeting Public Hearing. And this hearing is to hear comments or objections to the vacation of the north-south alley located in the Ecorse City Community Subdivision between Middle Belt Road and Farnham Avenue, north of Charles Avenue. Mr. Chair, we had roll call at our first special meeting, and we do have a quorum for this special meeting. So we will, at this time, I will go through the public hearing agenda. Number 1, roll call. Number 2, agenda. Number 3, the public hearing discussion, alley vacation between Middle Belt Road and Farnham Avenue. Number 4 is public comment, and number 5 is adjournment. And a motion would be in order to accept the special meeting public hearing agenda as presented.
So moved to accept the special meeting public hearing agenda as support.
A motion by Ms. Talley, supported by Ms. Abdo.
It's Mr.
No,
Crowe.
it's Mr. Kraut.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Kraut. To accept the public hearing agenda. Ms. Talley,
Yes.
Mr. Kraut,
Yes.
Ms. Abdo,
Yes.
Mr. Wadsworth.
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion approved.
Thank you. So the agenda now calls for the public hearing discussion, and I don't know who's going to be, to open us up in this discussion. Okay?
Hi. Good evening, council, city attorney, chief of staff, Madam Clerk, Deputy Clerk. My name is Don, I'm the assistant DPW director. My only concern on this vacate is the fact that we have a sanitary line that remains in that alley. And I just want to make sure that a utility access easement remains with the approval of this vacate.
I don't know if anyone wants to give the summary of why we're here for this public hearing.
Okay.
Good evening, council. So this
I can't
vacation,
hear anything that's going on in here,
Okay,
and it concerns me, because I live in that area.
okay. We'll speak a little louder, okay? We'll
Good
speak a
evening.
little louder.
good evening, council. This is brought to us with this alley vacation there's 8 parcels there that the property owner has a proposed development to do, and in those 8 parcels, he needs to combine all 8 of them for the space to do the parcels, and with that, this alley needs to be vacated first. The proposed development is a 9,800 square foot market and fueling station, gas station, but no diesel, with, it has 1 to 2 tenant spaces for restaurants as well. And this is part of this site plan proposal that this alleyway does need to be vacated to be able to combine those parcels that he owns. part of that is there is a sanitary sewer that runs in that alleyway, and part of that sanitary sewer will need to be relocated, but some will be remaining the same, but we'll need a access easement on that the property owner will do and get in his conditional rezoning agreement as well.
Through the chair.
Yes, Ms. Abdo?
So who's going to pay the cost of relocating that sanitary easement?
The developer.
And we will get that in writing?
Yes, he has
Okay.
a part of that. It'll come before, part of it's with the conditional rezoning agreement as well. Because most of that property is zoned commercial. It's got like mixed zoning right on that corner right there, but it does have to get a conditional rezoning agreement for the proposal to buy all the properties and do the development, yes.
Okay. Just so we're sure he's going to be doing it.
Any other discussion?
John?
Yes, Mr. Bosworth?
Is the market going to be knocked down? We're at E-Course in Middleville, right?
Yes, it'll be a whole new development, yes, it will.
And we just passed a moratorium on gas stations here at the last meeting.
Yes, and there was a moratorium put on gas stations for anything that wasn't already in place prior to that date or any current existing gas stations. This was submitted and paid for well prior to.
Okay, fine, okay, all right, fine.
Any other discussion from council?
Mr. Chair and
Yeah.
council, just want you to know that you'll be taking action on this subject matter under the clerk's report, line item 6E, under the clerk's report. So you'll be taking action on that.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Any other discussion? Anything else from you, DPW?
No, unless you guys have any questions.
Anything else from the group? Nothing? Okay.
Okay, if there's no more discussion from council, it takes us to public comment. And this is the portion of the agenda for those who are in the audience who would like to have comment concerning this discussion matter on this proposed alley vacation. At this time, raise your hand. After you're recognized by the chairperson, please approach the podium and state your name.
Yes, come up, please.
Good evening. I'm Tim McGee. I live on 7183 Farnham Street on Kitty Corner, adjacent to the Super Y that I think you were talking about here. As far as a gas station or whatever, there's no gas station. There's been a gas station there, and I've lived here all my life. And this invitation I got to your meeting was about vacating the alleyway behind my house. It was my understanding 20-some years ago that it had already been vacated. I was told 20-some years ago I could move my fence line halfway across that alley. What's the difference between 25 years ago and tonight? Because I can't understand anything these people were saying. I don't know what, other than vacating the alleyway. What's the purpose of it, and how's it going to affect me personally as one of two people that live in that section? There's only two of us that live there, other than the Super Y. And I don't know if anybody lives there or not. There's trailers upstairs. There used to be people that lived upstairs. I don't know what's going on over there. I've been there 75 years.
Can you speak to that?
The building department should get up and answer that.
It's someone,
I can't hear you either.
Behind you.
Hey, I'm Jeff, building director. Nice to meet you. So it's my understanding that a lot of these alleyways in this subdivision have been vacated in the past, but this alleyway right here has not been vacated. And what it means, like, for you to own the property, so when you vacate the alley, half of the width goes to one property owner, and then half of it goes to the other property owner. And then in this instance, there is a sanitary sewer, so there'll be an access easement that the city needs to make sure if there's ever a problem, they can go get on the property and fix the sanitary sewer. But that's what that vacation's gonna be. I don't know about anything about 25 years ago being vacated. I just know in records, that one has not been vacated as of yet.
I'm assuming it was when the airport came through and bought up, or,
Yeah, and I know the airport authority does own some properties right in that area, yeah.
most of them did.
But, and I think a lot of those were vacated, but this one still remains.
So I'm not gonna be personally involved, I mean, my sewer's still gonna be there.
Your sewer's still gonna be there, it's still gonna operate correctly. It's basically your property line will move half of the distance of whatever that alley is vacated, where you'll gain that much property, and then whoever owns the property next to it gains that much property as well.
That's what I understood.
Yep, the sewer will still be there, everything will still work, and then there will be an easement, so if there's ever a sewer problem, the city can come in and work on it.
Easily gonna be.
John?
Uh,
Jeff, is it possible that you could go out and meet with this gentleman at his house and explain it to him?
Oh, absolutely, I'd be more than happy to. I could come out and we can go over it, look at it. I can even find exactly where that easement's gonna be, or like really close to where that easement will be, so you know, and are aware.
I didn't move my fence or anything 25 years ago, because I wanted to keep the alley open, so
Yep,
utilities,
yeah.
whatever.
No, I
So that
understand.
was the easement. I don't understand when you say vacating.
Yeah, it's
You're always gonna have to have access to everything.
yep, there is gonna be an access easement, but that's never gonna be that'll never end up being a road. Like where that's not gonna be developed into a road. That's what it was on there for initially, was a paper road that they thought in time, long time ago, that would get developed and they would make more streets and stuff through there, but that's just, that alleyway's not gonna do that. It's just,
You're gonna make an appointment and go to his house?
absolutely, absolutely. I'll give you one of my cards and I can do it at your convenience.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
The deputy
Madam
clerk,
Clerk?
that vacation that he's talking about, the deputy clerk can kind of explain what section is actually vacated. We think this is what he's referring to.
Good
Okay.
evening, council, chief of staff, to our clerk. So there was 2 alleys in this particular section, and I'm going to bring the mic with me. So there is one alley that is being proposed for vacation, the north-south alley, north of Charles Avenue. There was an alley, an east-west alley, just south of E-Course, that was vacated. I believe Mr. McGahee is probably referencing that alley that was vacated probably 20-something years ago.
thank you.
Just for
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
clarification.
Any other comments from the public? Any other comments from the public? If there's no other comments from the public, Madam Clerk, close it out.
Takes us to number 5, adjournment.
So moved.
I second that motion.
Been motioned by Ms. Abdo, supported by Ms. Talley for adjournment. Ms. Abdo?
Yes.
Ms. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Wadsworth? Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Kraut? Chair votes yes. Motion approved. We are adjourned our